the Homeschool How-To. I'm Cheryl, and I left the life of classrooms and cubicles for home educating in the countryside. But I have no idea how to homeschool, so I interview the people who do. Join me on my quest to learn all the ways there is to homeschool. Welcome, and with us today I have Raya Bidshahari. How are you, Raya? Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So, when you had initially reached out about the podcast, you had discussed that you have an online platform for learning. And I really love this concept because it seems like it's becoming more and more popular to have alternative ways to educate our kids. And it's just so cool to know that parents have options. And I love that the podcast is sort of a platform where parents can kind of find all the different ways. It doesn't have to be like, okay, I had to quit my job to spend all day long doing the schoolwork with the kids or taking them here and there or joining a formal co-op or anything like that. This is now another alternative that parents have. So why don't you start by just kind of explaining what it is that you offer?
Absolutely. So, School of Humanity is an award-winning online high school. We are an American online high school, and we serve learners from 25 countries across 5 continents. And we are very much designed to create an alternative, an accredited alternative for learners and parents who are frustrated with the traditional education system, and they're frustrated with the emphasization on memorization for tests and the kind of cookie cutter curriculum that many of us are frustrated with. So at our high school, we learn by doing and having a positive impact on the world. The way that it works is that we have learners embark on interdisciplinary challenges. Examples of these challenges include things like designing space habitats, maintaining global peace, protecting our oceans, just to name a few. And over the course of every term, they collaborate in their sessions to engage, investigate, and act on these challenges. In parallel, they also embark on skill units where they develop different skills, and they also embark on a flourishing journey where we develop our emotional intelligence and well-being in life. So it really is a reimagination of what we learn, and how we learn, and why we learn in order to better serve learners in today's world.
That's so awesome. Now, if you could back up a little bit for me and just kind of explain how you got into this space and maybe what your background in your education was like to kind of lead you to this endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't grow up thinking I would go into education or become an educator. My journey into this very much happened out of my own frustration as a learner. Growing up, I was always someone who loved learning by doing, and I also really enjoyed reading and watching documentaries, and definitely, like many young minds, had that kind of curiosity to want to learn more. And I actually found that love of learning almost get like sucked out of me through the education system. So I prefer to learn on my own and following my curiosity than actually sit and memorize textbook after textbook and take tests and forget everything the semester later. And when I was doing my undergraduate degree in neuroscience at Boston University, I continued to kind of see these issues with our education system. I on one hand, had a lot of passion for the field, but I again could see that even at higher education, there's a lot of inefficiencies with the way that we're organizing things, a lack of focus on well-being and purpose, as well as a lack of emphasis on practical skills that you actually need for the workforce. So ultimately, I decided that when I was going to graduate, I pivoted and decided to go into ed tech and education and really try to do something about it. So my first attempts at solving the problem came from trying to tackle it at a supplementary education space through the extracurricular side of things, and saw that that was really frustrating and that the real impact lied in creating alternatives for families that they could embark on in parallel or instead of the education system. And really those were some of the philosophies and thinking that led to founding School of Humanity.
And how long has School of Humanity been in existence?
We're about 3.5 years old now. We started ideating in 2021. We launched our first full-time cohort in 2022.
What a fantastic time, too, because that's when parents were like, wait, we're seeing the online learning and this is what's going on in the classroom? What else can we do? And we can see our kids, they're doing the online learning. It's just, wow, this isn't really what we thought they would be learning or lack thereof. And so what a great time. And I totally hear you with the like knowledge, the hunger for knowledge just kind of being sucked out of you in the traditional sense, because like with the traditional education system, because myself was the same way. I remember there would be periods of my life, and I don't know if it was maybe who I was with friends with at the time, or maybe a character on a TV show or a movie that I, really wanted to be like, if they were the smart ones or something. I want to be smart. I want to know stuff. And I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. And it never occurred to me like in the classroom, because it was kind of like that's where you went to just waste time, or like sit through the day. Kind of felt like somewhere to be babysat while your parents were at work. It never, and the test taking. Oh my gosh, we can get into that in a moment. But okay, so you said that School of Humanity is accredited. Could you kind of, because I know that's another thing parents worry about with the homeschool realm. Well, oh, how do I know that it'll be accepted if they want to go to university? So what is your accrediting? What does that look like? What makes you accredited versus something else?
Yeah, so we're internationally accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. So for anyone that's not aware, the way accreditation works in the United States is you have regional accrediting bodies like Western Association of Schools and Colleges, you have the Northeastern Association, and so on. And these bodies are mandated by the Department of Education to be able to accredit schools. And the way that the process typically works is that it can take a school a few years. It took us a few years to get fully accredited, and involves essentially an analysis of your pedagogical practice, your leadership, your resource management, your safeguarding. So contrary to a lot of popular opinion, accrediting bodies don't come in and tell you you have to do this or you have to do that. And they actually give you a lot of freedom to innovate, which is something that I think a lot of us in this space value. But what they're looking at is whether you have the right systems and structures in place that are robust and are aligned with best practice in education. So for us, being accredited is that stamp to universities that this is a school that has certain standards in place. In addition to the accreditation, the thing to recognize for university admissions is different universities have different requirements. For many test optional universities, the accredited degree on its own and a portfolio of projects and that well-rounded application is enough. But some universities might still require the SATs. And so about 30 to 40% of our first graduating class are going to take the SATs. But we work with all of our learners from ninth grade onwards in workshops around career and university counseling, as well as one-on-one sessions to figure out what their pathway post-graduation is and how we can best support them.
Oh, awesome. And kind of as you were talking on the last portion as well, it just got me thinking about, you had mentioned like their emotional well-being and their purpose. And I think we're looking at like what we saw in 2020 and thereafter, a lot of the schools are going forward with this, and it's a whole funding source, the reason that they're doing it, but, pushing like different agendas and stuff. And so I think parents are very quick to be like, oh, emotional intelligence, we want to stay clear away from that because it's like leading to other things down the line in the curriculums at the schools. Things like, I won't even get into it, but there is a difference in what you're talking about with your emotional well-being and how to regulate your feelings and why you're feeling that way, and your purpose in life with like how we connect to nature, and the oceans, like what is going on? Where does our garbage go? Well, if it's, there's a lot of it going in the oceans. How is that affecting the life in the oceans? And, so there's a lot of back and forth between things that we hear as like buzzwords and people just like, no, we don't want that for our kid. And like, no, there is a space for that without like other agendas. And I think we just have to be so careful as parents to, think like we do want our kids to connect with nature, and we do want them to be emotionally evolved so that they can talk about their feelings. And, and it doesn't mean their feelings have to be like, hey, today I'm a cat. Like, no, it's, hey, if you're frustrated, tell me why, and that sort of thing. So I want people, like, as I'm realizing, because my kids are young and we're getting into this, homeschooling now, and I'm seeing stuff that goes on at the school down the road through like just people I know that go there, and I teach actually a Zumba class there. So I see different things on the walls there, and there is a difference, and you really want to think about what you want for your child. And that's so important, because now we're doing a nature study right now and really connecting with things like mushrooms outside. And I'm like, wow, this is stuff I never learned in school. And our ancestors knew all of this stuff in like our grandparents probably did. And so in like 2 generations, they've completely cut us off with busying us so much, the long work days and the evening activities and the fast food so that we can, just put something on the table or in our stomachs, and really disconnecting from like what's out there. What has nature put out there for us to eat? So I really love that your curriculum goes over that. Now, if you could talk to me a little bit about, you said your students learn by doing. Since it's an online program, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so the curriculum is a combination of project-based and challenge-based learning. So challenge-based learning is a learning model where you learn through challenges. So it's a bit more broader than project-based learning. And so, I gave some examples of challenges earlier, but something like maintaining global peace is a really broad challenge. Underneath that, you can then choose what you focus on. So the way that structurally things work during a learning week is that about half of the learning is in online workshops and the other half is self-paced. And during the online workshops, we do lots of games, activities, discussions, mind maps. They're really interactive sessions. And over the course of the term, we start off with the first half of the term being led by educators. So if you take something like maintaining global peace, we might look at it from a history perspective, looking at historical events and world wars. We might look at it from a psychology perspective by understanding the psychology of conflict between people. We even look at it from a politics perspective by understanding political systems and how they contribute to peace or violence and so on. And so for a few weeks, we do this kind of interdisciplinary analysis through projects. And then in the second half of the term, learners choose which sub-challenges they'd like to focus on and develop their own solutions and act on it. And these solutions can be entrepreneurial, they can be artistic, they can be technological, really anything that learners are passionate about. And so that's the way the challenges are scaffolded to be applicable to the real world. In parallel, learners also can choose different areas of the curriculum they want to go in depth into. So we do these skill units on a range of different literacies and topics. For example, we have a skill unit on designing with nature, which is focused on biomimicry and what we can learn from the natural world and innovative solutions. We have, lots of quantitative focused units on things like geometry and design or data for the sustainable development goals, where they get the opportunity to work on projects while developing their skills. And I think I want to take a step back and explain why it's really powerful to connect this learning to the real world, because it's not just about connecting it to problems in the world with an agenda, but rather contextualizing what we're learning in the context of real world challenges just immediately makes it more relevant to learners. They can immediately see why they're learning what they're learning. They can see the application of it. And for many learners, that's significantly more engaging than just theoretical abstract knowledge without that link to how this can help us either better ourselves as human beings or better the world at large.
That's so important. And I started seeing that, last year as I was trying to go over kindergarten stuff with my son. And it's like, okay, this is A. A says at. And I'm sitting there after a while thinking, he's probably going, why do I need to know this? What is A says at? Why wouldn't A say anything at all? And it's like, I had to take a step back and say, okay, well, this is the alphabet. And when each, letter has its own sound, and it's not that it says at, it's just when you see that, the sound you would say is at, and like really explaining the application of it. And then once you learn those, we'll combine them together. And sometimes they still make that sound and sometimes they don't. But really, or even 1 + 1. Okay, well, your kid can say, all right, 1 + 1 is 2. But why do you need to know that? Well, if you're baking and you have 1 apple and you have to go to the store because you need 2, how many more do you have to buy? Or just simple things like that. Or maybe my son, I have to like relate it into like a car or a 4-wheeler or something like that. But it makes the world of difference to the child. So I think like that is the most important thing about school. And history, like you said, the psychology of the wars and the systems set up, because in school we just learn, okay, the War of 1812 was fought in 1812. And, as I'm a 40-year-old, I have no idea why we fought in the War of 1812, who fought it or why. And it's like, I think someone explained it to me on one of my podcast episodes that when he teaches it to his students, it's, no, this was like the person you thought that was going to win. And then the underdog came in and it's like, it was this huge thing because nobody saw it coming. And I'm like, well, that sounds way more interesting than what I learned about. So now I'm excited to go over that with my son. But right, like the story behind the why is so important. And all right, so if I were to to take, register with you guys, be enrolled in School of Humanity, what would my day or my week look like? Is the everything laid out in a live class form? Are there recorded sessions that I would watch from you and homework? I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, yeah. So we are a full-time program, and that learners typically need to commit at least 30 hours a week, as with any school week. We follow a 4-day week in that we have sessions Monday through Thursday, and the Friday is really up to learners in terms of how they organize that time, whether it's for focus or flow, or whether it's extracurriculars or socialization or whatever they need. And in the days that we have sessions, we don't have any more than 3 hours of sessions that day, obviously broken down into smaller chunks. And then the rest of the time is in self-paced learning on our platform. The self-paced learning can be pre-session assignments, post-session projects, skill units I mentioned earlier, and so forth. In terms of the workshops, we don't do pre-recorded sessions. They're always live. They're an incredible opportunity for our learners to get together and solve problems together, guided by the facilitator. We have these challenge workshops where we do those interdisciplinary sessions that I explained earlier, but we also have sessions with different focus areas. So for example, we do an hour a week of pathway advisory workshops. These are where we do sessions on career and university exploration and future skills. We have an hour a week of human flourishing session. This is where we focus on soft skill development and emotional intelligence and purpose. We also have some time set aside for quantitative skills for learners that need additional support on math. And so, so to summarize, 4 days a week, a balance of synchronous and asynchronous. I will also add that we have currently 2 different cohorts in different time zones. We have an Americas cohort and then a cohort that's more Asia, and they do come together for 2 of the sessions every week where everyone is together. So part of the beauty is that you get to make friends from all around the world. We have students calling in from 25 countries across 5 continents and a range of socioeconomic backgrounds. So it makes it a really global experience for everyone.
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome. And now you talked a little bit about like counseling for, or like, well, what I took from it was a guidance counseling sort of thing, like what to do after high school. What do you have set up for kids to get them ready for the next step? Is college the next step, or is, something else? What does that look like in a School of Humanity?
Yeah, so we don't assume that everyone has to go to college and everyone wants to go to college. I think, for most learners that is an aspiration. But in today's world, there's so many different pathways available post high school. You have nano degrees, associate degrees, apprenticeship programs, many kinds of roles where you can go direct to industry. Some learners want to take gap years. Some even want to start their own ventures and entrepreneurial ventures. So when we were developing our pathway advisory program, we kind of looked at all these different pathways and asked ourselves how we can best equip learners for all of them. Because we do have, a couple of learners who are interested in more non-traditional paths after they graduate from high school. So the program is usually structured into these weekly workshops where, we look at all these different opportunities and we look at how to best prepare for all of them. So covering sessions that maybe are a bit more traditional, like navigating university requirements, interview skills, writing about your accomplishments, but also looking at topics like resume building, jobs of the future, trends in the workforce, things like advanced interview skills. And so the idea is that learners can explore all these different pathways throughout their time at School of Humanity, and when they graduate, they understand what the requirements are for those different paths, and they're well equipped for them.
Yeah, jobs of the future. That's a big undertaking, and I think that's something that, I mean, I haven't been in school in a long time, but with my sister's kids who all graduated in the last 5 years, I really can see a lack of like, and I felt that way too. You graduate and it's like, well, I'm going to college just because that's what they say you should do if you want to be successful. And so you do that. And then it's like, well, now what? I don't know. I guess I just have to find a job. And that ties into the purpose that you were talking about earlier. What is your purpose? Can you align your purpose with a way to bring in an income? And thinking about the jobs of the future, well, maybe, standing up as a teacher in a classroom, that after taking your exam or whatever and getting hired with the Board of Education, maybe that's not the future of teaching anymore. Maybe you can be innovative and create a school or online school, that sort of thing. So that is, I just think, so awesome, and something our schools are just lacking so much right now. these kids, none of, I know so many high schoolers and college graduates that just have no idea where to go. It's sad. And yeah, I think it
Yeah.
just definitely ties into the purpose for sure. So, what sort of
Absolutely. I
successes
think
have
we just
you?
to share
Yeah.
something helpful for your listeners, one of my favorite frameworks, are you familiar with Ikigai as a framework? So Ikigai is a Japanese word for purpose, and it basically says that your purpose lies at the intersection of what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And so think of it as like a Venn diagram where at this intersection of these four things is your purpose. And so this is one of the kind of tools we use with our learners on a regular basis because it takes a lot of reflection over time and you can have more than one purpose and it could change. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we don't expose parents or learners enough to the emerging industries of the future. Just to share a brief anecdote here, we recently invited a sustainability consultant to speak to our learners just to share more about her career and her career story and what she does on a day-to-day basis. And at the end of the session, we had a few learners who were really interested in that career path who had never heard of what a sustainability consultant does. And if you think about the kinds of jobs that are out there that are emerging and many new ones being born, and then you contrast to the exposure that a lot of our high schoolers are getting or the lack of, it really raises a question of whether we have the right to ask them what they want to be when they grow up if we haven't given them the opportunity to truly explore their options.
Yeah, that's true. And how do you get that exposure? I know for us it was watching the show Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe and we would just watch the show like every weekend morning over breakfast and showing my kids like, look, that's another job and wow. And then when you think
Yeah.
about in the future, by the time my kids graduate, most of those jobs and dirty jobs probably wouldn't even be relevant anymore because there's new technologies, but with that comes new jobs too. And that's really cool. So yeah, do you have any success stories for us or any students that really like stuck out to you, like and what they did after, or even came to you like not liking learning at all and totally changed?
Yeah, yeah. There's so many. I mean, we serve different kinds of pain points from families, so it's interesting to see the different scenarios play out. So we've had a number of learners who one of our learners, Brielle, her mom, Margareta, recently was sharing in an interview how they were throughout primary school, moving from school to school. Like there were many different issues, frustrations with the curriculum, instances of bullying and so forth. And then they were homeschooling for a few years. And she just described our school as a school of her dreams because she felt like, okay, finally, like we can learn through practical applications and actually she feels like her daughter can see the relevance of everything that she's learning in school. We've had also a few wonderful instances of learners with special learning differences who were really struggling engaging with traditional learning modalities who once had more flexibility in their schedules or had the project-based element, the personalized support, were really able to thrive. And some of my favorite stories of impact are learners who are having a positive impact on the world. We have a number of learners that are working on some really cool things. One of our learners in Kenya, Fardeen, is leading a non-for-profit. We have that same learner I mentioned earlier, Brielle, who's actually launching a startup in the food security and circular economy space. And so it really excites me when I see, learners or take the projects they're working on and their challenges and then build on them because they're so excited to like learn through that modality. Regardless of whether those initiatives succeed, they learn so much more, right, by actually taking that forward. So yeah, lots of positive impact.
That. And what about like for different classes? In the traditional schools, okay, I'm going to take Spanish this semester and, gym is a requirement. And so like every state has a different sort of requirement. However, you're not technically homeschoolers. So how does that work? Like I'm in the state of New York. We have pretty strict homeschooling guidelines. In your school, do you have to stick to each state's homeschooling guidelines or do you have your own set of criteria and we don't need to worry about that?
Yeah, so we're licensed out of Florida, which has a lot of freedom for independent and private schools. And that's one of the reasons we chose Florida as a state to set up our school as a virtual like license. So we don't have state laws to abide by. And instead, we've created our own core curriculum standards that we want to ensure all learners work towards. Now, we do deal with regulations a lot regardless because we serve learners from all around the world and different countries have different regulations. Some places don't recognize online schooling, so you're considered a homeschooler, and some places don't recognize homeschooling altogether. So there's all these different nuances that we often have to deal with. But generally speaking, what we do is work with families on a case by case basis. So if there's a situation where they need to register with the state, we help them with the documentation. In some countries, we have to do a bit of research with the family on university requirements because it's more complicated for them. So it really varies. There's so many different sets of laws. I will add though that one of the other areas we've been increasingly looking into is education savings accounts. We're a registered vendor in 3 states already and are looking into more. And I think that's a really exciting segue for us to be able to offer our model at no cost to families where it's kind of covered by the state.
Awesome. And so kind of as we round out, why don't you talk to us about the cost if I wanted to, enroll my children? Do you have upfront costs, or is it, I know a lot of states now are actually reimbursing some homeschooling families. So
Yes,
yeah, I'm sure
yes,
there's
yes.
so many different options. So I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, so our baseline annual tuition is around 7,800 USD a year, and that can be broken down into the termly payments of 3 terms. We do offer a generous financial aid program. There's always in every cohort a number of learners who don't pay anything and a number of learners that pay, or families that pay partial tuition. So we do always welcome families to apply if affordability is an issue because there might just be 8 seats available in that cohort. And then I mentioned there are 3 states, which are Utah, Arizona, and West Virginia, where we are registered with the education savings accounts as a vendor. And in those states, we can do up to full tuition coverage. That would be covered by the state. So depending on whether the families are getting reimbursed on other things, the other supplies and tools, it might be up to full tuition coverage. So we really encourage families from those states that are considering to apply with us, and we can help guide them on how to get that reimbursement from the state.
And where can people find you? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you or your school or find out more information about the school? And I can link all of this in the show's description as well, but I'll let you
Sure. Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah. So honestly, all the details can be found on our website. So the sofhumanity.com, which I'm sure you'll link. You can find information about the curriculum, the model, contact forms are on there, application forms, everything is on there. I also encourage everyone to follow us on Instagram. We're quite active and we share updates of the learners, the cohorts, our educators. It's a nice way to get a deeper glimpse into all of it in action.
Anything else that you want to make sure you talk about before we finish up today?
No, I think we've covered all the grounds. I guess I'll just wrap up by adding that we have served a lot of homeschoolers, and I think I have so much respect for every homeschooling family I meet. They're some of the most wonderfully hands-on parents that I've ever met. So I really enjoy working with homeschoolers, and big kudos to you as well for putting together all these incredible resources for families out there.
Thank you so much, Raya. Thank you for your time today and for what you're doing. This is just amazing. I'm so glad that parents have more than one option than just traditional school. This is great. So I'll link everything in the show's description. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.